Good morning, sir. My name is Paulo Gregorio, and we are the Group 5. We will discussing the results annotation of Antonio de Morga'S Sucesos de las Islas, Filipinas. Sucesos de las Islas, Filipinas is a book written and published by Antonio de Morga. He considered one of the most important work in the early history of Spanish colonized in the Philippines. It was published in 1609 after he was reassigned in Mexico in 2 volumes by Casa de Jeronimo Valley in Mexico City. The first English translation was published in London in 1868, and another English translation by Blair and Robertson was published in Cleveland in 1907. In Spanish word, Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas por el Dr. Antonio de Morga, obra publicada en México en el año de 1609, nuevamente sacada a luz y anotada por José Rizal, presidida en prólogo del profesor Fernando Blumentritt. In English mean, event in the Philippine island by Dr. Antonio de Morga, a work published in Mexico in a year 1609, reprinted and annotated by Jose Rizal, preceded by the introduction by Professor Ferdinand Blumentritt. Next was the definition of terms. First was the annotation. Annotation is a note of explanation or comment added to a text or diagram. Next was sucesos. Sucesos is an event, happening, or occurrence. And the last was the Las Islas Filipinas, meaning the Philippine island.
So hi everyone, my name is Jimelin Katie Badu, and I'm going to report about what initially prompted Rizal to do the annotation. First is, Rizal have been reflecting on his country's history. Second is, Blumentritt could not be persuaded to write the history of the Philippines. So, Dr. Rizal had been reflecting about our country's past, and he had a burning desire to know exactly the condition of the Philippines when the Spaniards came here, because he realized the importance of the past as opposed to understand the present and eventually to confront the future. Despite of this, he restrained himself from embarking some historical research and admit his advocacy to do the same. Makikita ito sa letter na ipinadala niya sa kanyang matalik na kaibigan na si Blumentritt. Instead, he asked his friends to write a history of the Philippines since he knew that Blumentritt is capable of doing it. And because he already read a lot of books about the Philippines and Spain. However, Blumentritt refused to do it, so instead he encouraged Rizal more to write the history of his own country by saying na dapat daw ay isang Indio ang gumawa ng annotation o sumulat ng history ng bansa nito at hindi isang foreigner. By the time that Blumentritt refused Rizal was already working on the sequel of the Noli Me Tangere, but Rizal tore up the completed chapters of Il Filibusterismo and changed its plot completely and decided to set aside his literary labors and began to work the history of his own country. So, bakit nga ba pinili ni Rizal yung work ni Morga but first, let me introduce to you who is Antonio de Morga. So, who is Antonio de Morga? Antonio de Morga is a Spanish lawyer and official in the Philippines during the 17th century that was born in 1559 in Seville. He graduated in the University of Salamanca in the year of 1574 and attained a doctorate in canon law. He taught briefly on Osuna and later on he returned to Salamanca to study civil law. He also engaged in government service. He was a lieutenant governor in Manila, the second most powerful position in the colony. So after he resigned from being a lieutenant governor, he became a judge in Udencia. He is the author of an annotated book of Rizal, Sucesos de las Islas, Filipinas.
Good day everyone, my name is Aliyah de Pergola and I will be continuing the report of Jimilin Buato. His book is one of the most important works in the Philippines about the colonization of the Spain, as it explains the political, social, economical aspects of the colonizers in the colonized country. So, ba't nga ba nag-end up si Morgan na isulat na ang librong ito? So, there is a claim down na sinimulan ni Morgan na isulat ang librong ito, yung Sucesos, as a way to save himself from the disaster with the Dutch invaders in Manila. Morga'S reputation in the colonies sounded like his flagship and eventually transferred to Mexico. Bakit nga ba pinili ni Rizal yung work ni Morga over the other Spanish accounts, and why does he recommended Morga to his countrymen?
Why choose Morga? There are 5 reasons why Rizal choose Morga. The first one is the original book is rare. Morga's book is rare. The original Spanish textbook of Morga has never been reprinted until the annotated edition of Rizal. The second one is Morga was a layman, not a religious chronicler. Layman means a person who is not part of the clergy. There's a main complaint about religious historian. They tackle more about church history rather than the history of the Philippines and its people. Third, Morga is to be more objective than the other religious writer. Religious missionaries, their aim was not the history as it is, but to record the achievement of their religion. Number 4, Morga was more sympathetic to the Indios. Morga's more sympathetic because many Indios are biased and downright racist. Number 5. Morga was not only an eyewitness but a major actor in the events he narrates. Morga was an eyewitness, therefore a primary source of the Philippines and its people. So let's talk about the introduction of Sucesos. Rizal dedicated his work for the Filipinos so they may know their glorious past. So Rizal said on his dedication, "In Nolima Tangere, I stated to sketch the present state of our fatherland. The effect which may attempt produce made me realize, before proceeding to develop before you your eyes are the picture to follow, the necessity of giving an understanding of the past in order to better to judge present and to measure the path transversed during the 3 countries." And he seemed to be reflecting to our country past or history, shortly after completing the said novel in the late February, and obviously drawing on a popular Tagalog proverb, ang hindi marunong lumingon sa pinanggalingan ay hindi makakarating sa paroroonan.
Objectives of Rizal in rewriting Philippine history. Number 1, to prove that Filipinos are civilized even before the coming of the Spaniards. Number 2, to awaken the consciousness of the Filipinos regarding the glorious ways of the past. Number 3, to correct what has been distorted about the Philippines due to Spanish conquest. At according nga kay Rizal, kung talagang ma-achieve yung aims na yon, ay ibig sabihin, hindi mapupunta or hindi napunta sa wala ang paghihirap niya sa pagsulat ng kanyang anotasyon. So, yung unang 7 chapters nito ay naglalaman ng mga kaganapang may kaugnayan sa politika at gobyerno na ganap dito sa Pilipinas. Sa ilalim ng tema na naunang 11 gobernador general na naatas sa mamahala dito, magmula kay Miguel Lopez de Legazpi hanggang kay Pedro de Acuña. Chapters 1-7, puno siya ng istorya tungkol sa intriga politika na kinasangkutan ng mga gobernador general. Nakasaad dito na yung mga gobernador general habang pinamamahalaan yung evangelization na pagkikristyanize sa Pilipinas ay nilayong ding masakop ang mga teritoryo ng Moluccas, China, Japan, Cambodia, Siam at Cochin China. At yung Moluccas nga sa kabila ng pagkakasakop dito ng Portugal ay nanatili pa rin ng spice trade sa pagitan nito at ng Pilipinas. At yung mga Espanyol na nakabase sa Manila ay naglalayag papuntang Moluccas. Hindi lamang para sa spice trade, kundi para magkalat din ng intriga o issue sa mga prinsipe doon na lagi namang mayroong away sa pagitan ng isa't isa. With regards of evangelization ng Pilipinas, Dr. Jose Rizal on his annotation on this part, sinabi niya na yung pag-evangelize sa Pilipinas sa mga panahon na yon ay malayo pa sa pagiging kompleto. Kung kaya't hindi naman talaga kailangan ng mga gobernador general na mag-cross borders. Stated in this chapter 2 were about the nepotism or yung unfair na practice ng mga taong may kapangyarihan o katukulan na kung saan binibigyan nila ng trabaho o pabor yung mga kamag-anak nila at ito raw ay common or pangkaraniwan sa Pilipinas noon. Gayon din ang corruption and also yung mga relihiyoso ng panahon na to ay walang mitis or walang tigil sa pagpapakalat ng pananampalataya. Pananampalataya mayroon sila among the infidels. Yung mga infidels, siya yung mga taong hindi naniniwala sa katulad na relihiyon na pinaniniwalaan ng mga relihiyoso na banggit. At kadalasan daw yung mga ganitong gawain socio-political ay ginagawa without the knowledge of the Spanish monarchs. Sa mga chapters na ito, sa chapters 1-7, maraming naisulat si Morga tungkol sa Moro pirate raids na naganap sa Visayas at Luzon at gayon din ang mga pagtatangka ng mga Spanish governors na sakupin ang Mindanao, Hulu at Sulu. Dr. Rizal noted na dahil ang Spanish colonial administration noon ay hindi pinayagang humawak ng armas ang mga natives na nabinyagan na bilang Kristiyano ay hindi nila magawang ipagtanggol ang kanilang sarili laban sa mga Moro pirates nga at sa halip yung kawalan nila ng armas na yon ay parang naging daan pa para ma-encourage ang pang-aatake ng mga Moro. Meanwhile, yung last chapter naman, yung chapter 8, an account of the Philippine Island, naglalaman siya ng higit ng mga personal na obserbasyon ni Morga tungkol sa Pilipinas. At dito nga, naging interesado si Dr. Jose Rizal. At naging daan para sa kanyang mga annotations na siya ang ating pagtutuunan sa susunod na parte ng aming report. Yung chapter 8, naglalaman siya ng description tungkol sa previous Spanish Filipinos or Indios at sa Pilipinas at the time of the Spanish contact. Malaki ang naitulong ng chapter na ito kay Dr. Jose Rizal sa pagtukoy sa tunay na kalagayan ng Pilipinas bago pa dumating ang mga Espanyol at sa pagtatama ng maling pananaw tungkol sa mga Pilipino at maling konstruksyon na kasaysayan ng Pilipinas na nakasaad sa mga Spanish accounts.
Good morning again, sir. And now I will going to discuss the indigenous people. According to Antonio de Morga, those native living in Luzon are tribe whom one cannot be saved with, because to pacify them it is either through good or violent means. According to the statement of Dr. Jose Rizal, they will always choose violence until the government enters because of their inhuman ways as answer to those who do not submit to the friars. Next is the body tattoo. According to the statement of Antonio de Morga, the body tattoo is inhabitant native also known as Bisaya draw patterns. First, before putting black powder where the blood owes. Rizal statement. Dr. Jose Rizal was agreed for what are saying by Antonio de Morga about that body tattoo. Next is the clothing. According to the statement of Antonio de Morga, clothing is a middle of their waist they wore, bahag, and their forehead wrapped with a potong. And for Dr. Jose Rizal's statement, bahag is a rich colored cloth and quite often with gold stripes, and they put Moro style like a turban. Next was food. According to Antonio de Morga, he said that Filipinos eat best and fish, which they know is best when it has started to root and stink. Dr. Jose Rizal's statement, he was disgusted when he read about that it Morga'S Sucesos in his annotation. He went to say that the Spaniards, like any other people, treat food, which they are not a constant to be discussed. He clarified na yung isda na tinutukoy ni Antonio de Morga sa kanyang annotation ay hindi pa masarap ang pagkagawa hanggang sa ito ay magsimula ng mabulong. At ang tinutukoy po dito ay ang bagoong. At sa mga nakalasa at nakakain ito ay alam na po na hindi ito dapat bulok or routine.
Next is drinking. So, Morga said that native drink heavily. They all end up drunk during wedding feasts. So, the reason why Morga state that is because in gatherings, natives used to eat and drink the whole day until sunset. So Rizal said in his annotation, Rizal quoted Father Colin, who said it is common knowledge that they drink a lot, but no matter how inebriated they seem to be after a gathering or a feast, they can always find their way home. So next is government. Morga said there were no kings and queens or lords in different barrios of provinces to rule. Instead, they considered principals among the natives. So, these principals were looked up to, respected, and obeyed by their constituents. So, Rizal agreed on it. So, in Morga, individuals or families belonging to the principals formed relationships and friendships with each other, and sometimes due to differences caused wars. Rizal pointed out that friendly relations were more common. Dr. Rizal emphasized that friendly relations were more common as opposed to make. Next is marriage, family, and household. Morga said the groom contributes a dowry which he received from his parents. The bride does not bring anything until she inherits from her parents. So, on Rizal, a Fumo woman helps her husband and is not seen as a burden. Somehow, taliwas ito sa ibig na kahalugan ni Morga na lalaki or yung husband lang ang may ambag. The house where the parents and children lives is called a bahandin. In Tagalog, a house is called pamamahay. It is impossible that bahandin is printed for bahayin. Dr. Rizal corrected the term bahandin, stated in Tagalog a house is called pamamahay. It is impossible that bahandin is printed for bahayin. So Morga said that inasawa is a wife married to a native man. So according to Morga, a wife married to a native man is called inasawa. So on Rizal, asawa is the term called for the wife of the native man. Dr. Rizal once again corrected the term used. It was not inasawa, but rather asawa. Next is religion or healers. Morga said there were no priests or men of religion to attend to religious matters. They believed in idols and superstitions which the devil inspired them to do to tell whether sick persons would live or die. So Rizal said there were priests called Kataluna or Babaylan. However, they were not clarified as they were believed to be low first.
Beliefs on crocodile. Morga said that natives revere and venerate the crocodile because they are afraid of its power. Rizal explained that there were instances where crocodiles, while sparring their Indio servants, gobbled friars. Dahil sa paniniwala nilang galit sila sa praile, kaya galit din ang mga crocodile sa praile. Custom for the dead. Morga said they buried the dead in their houses. In their funeral, there was no procession, only those performed by the members of the household of the dead. And Rizal said it is much more natural to venerate the remains of our loved ones than those fanatical martyrs whom we have no dealing and who probably will never remember us. Trade and economy. First, cotton. According to Morga'S view, cotton is raised in the island and they spin it to thread and sell it. And Rizal agreed. Weaving. They weave blanket and garment which they also sell. But Rizal said Morga must meant sinamay which was woven from abaca. Next one is artifact. The natives of the island sell the artifacts to the Japanese. Rizal agreed. And the last one is gold. Igorot kept their gold buried in the ground. And Rizal
Artillery. According to Morga, Governor Santiago de Vera on his time had set up a foundry for the making of artillery under the hands of an old Indio called Pandapira. Pandapira is a native ng Pampanga na inutasan ngayon ni Governor de Vera para mag-produce ng artilleries. If you will search what does artillery means and relate the result to their context, artillery or artilleries means large caliber guns used in warfare on land. According to Rizal, talk about Pandapira as an Indio who already knew how to found cannons even before the arrival of the Spaniards. Why he supported the claim of Morga about the artillery? In the Philippines, we can see here that their claim is quite deviated from each other. Cannons are very different from large cans. Alam naman po natin yung itsura ng kanyon as compared to artilleries or large cans na nakikita po natin. Shipbuilding industry. According to Morga, describe Filipino boats large enough to carry 100 rowers on the border or banda and 30 soldiers on top or pelya. In total, 130 people can be carried by a single boat made by the Indios back then. According to Rizal, claimed that the country at one time, with primitive means, built ships of around 2,000 tons. He then proceeded by lamenting the environmental cost of Spanish boat building. Rizal expounded on that by saying that Filipinos, like the inhabitants of Marianas, renowned for their ship building and navigational skills. But unfortunately, there was no progress because the natives were obliged to make European-style boats like the galleons. In Morga'S, there is a system of writing, but in Dr. Rizal, the system of writing is accompanied by written literature.
Next is the criticism to Rizal's annotation. The importance of Rizal's annotation to Antonio de Morga was that he tried to use history and historical revision, but not just to express his personal view on the historiography, but to create a sense of national consciousness or identity. So, historical revision is always met with varying degrees of opposition and results at first attempt at writing Philippine history was no exemption. That the Spaniard would object was inevitable and Rizal was prepared for this. When for Antonio de Morga was officially abandoned in the Philippines. That's all for my report, sir.
Next is Ferdinand Blumentritt. He has a historical use of hindsight. Second is strong anti-clerical bias. The first to criticize by the professor was Dr. Rizal. Use of hindsight or knowledge and understanding of an event after it occurred. Second, as mentioned, was his strong anti-clerical bias. Another one who was criticized Dr. Rizal and his annotation was a fellow patriot person.
Isabelo de los Reyes, also known as Don Belong, was a prominent Filipino prior politician, writer, journalist, and a labor activist in the 19th and 20th century. In 1889, he founded El Ilocano, said to be the first newspaper written solely in the Philippines vernacular.
Conclusion. In conclusion, kung ang nalimitang here ay tungkol sa kasalukuyan at ang El Filibusterismo naman ay tungkol sa hinaharap, ang anotasyon ni Dr. Rizal na Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas ni Morga ay tungkol naman sa nakaraan. Inialay niya ito sa mga kapwa niya Filipino at naglalayong gisingin ang kanilang mga diwa tungkol sa mayaman nilang nakaraan. Patunay ay ang pagiging sibilisado na ng mga Filipino noon pa man upang maitama ang mga maling pagtingin sa mga Pilipino at maging sa Pilipinas. Sa pamamagitan nito, inaasahang mabubuo ang isang diwa at identidad ng makabansa. Lahat tayo ay familiar sa kasabihang mula rin sa ating pabansang bayani na si Dr. Rizal na ang hindi marunong lumingon sa pinanggalingan ay hindi makakarating sa paruroonan. At kung iuugnay natin ito sa kanyang mga gawa o akda, ang anotasyon niya na libro ni Morga ang pinanggalingang dapat lingunin hindi lamang nila noon, kundi pati na rin natin maging sa kasalukuyan.
And that ends our report. Thank you for watching.